What's up, my dude? Shout out to Jeremy Monceu for the $25 donation. God dang, dude. Almost made a top donator of all time. So, wanted to come in here and do a Rut Tester video on MXGP Pro because I know a lot of people are kind of wondering about the terrain deformation, how it is in the game, stuff like that. Didn't really mention it too much in my review of the game because, I mean, yeah, it is somewhat improved, but it's not something that's like an insane thing. I think you notice it a lot more on certain tracks. I think that's kind of how it is in the game. Like about I would say 80% of the tracks in the game you barely even notice it, and then like the other 20% you notice it a little bit once you get like 20 minutes into a moto or something like that. So I feel kind of like that's how it is in the game. This is one track in the game that I really did feel like it was actually doing something on the track, so that was kind of cool. Definitely does seem a little bit improved from how it was in the official Monster Energy Supercross game and MXGP3 and stuff like that, but you kind of got to be on a specific track to get that feeling. It doesn't happen like that on every track. But the cool thing about this game, and good God, gotta love that collision, bro. I think it is a little bit better in this game, but it's just kind of, it's one of those things that it's still just I don't know, man. It's a different experience than riding on a track that has pre-made ruts on it. Has pre-made inside lines, stuff like. It's just different. There's no other way to really explain that to you. It's just it's kind of like the issue that MX Simulator is going through right now with the road and doing all that in the pro racing and stuff. It's just not the same as having pre-baked roughness, pre-baked inside ruts, like 4 ruts in the corner. I'm not talking about the MX versus ATV Unleashed Untamed days where you got damn huge ass inside berms and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual inside grabbable ruts. So we're going to get in here and do a 30-minute plus 2 ski, my dude skis, and hopefully we'll be able to see exactly what this is doing. Now, I did ride a full 30-minute plus 2 on this track right here, trying to get some credits to unlock some shit. Takes forever in this game. There's actually, I feel like there's a little bit of a bug in that sense, a little bit of an exploit where if you run the shorter races, it actually gives you more XP for the amount of time that you're doing it, which I think they had that problem back in the Fisher Monster Energy Supercross game, if I'm not mistaken, but like, for instance, seems like it'll give you like 5,000 for a short race, which is 5 minutes, but you only get 9,000 for a long race, which is 30 minutes plus 2 laps. And if you do the math on that, it doesn't add up. So if you're trying to get credits really quick, just go in there and do you a couple of short races, and that's about the quickest way to do it there. But yeah, this is I've rode on probably about 8 of the tracks, 9 of the tracks, and I've just ran full 30-minute plus 2 lap motos because I thought I had to do that to get good XP, but it's actually not the case. But that's why I was going in there and doing super long motos. So I have a pretty good idea on how the tracks rut up on different types of tracks, like the clay tracks versus the hard pack tracks, this, that, and other. So this is the track I noticed it the most on, and this is technically a sand track in the game. So it's kind of weird. You would think, I don't know, it seems like a sand track wouldn't make as many like hardcore ruts, but it seems like this is the track that does make the hardcore ruts. I don't know, but it still does feel like sand, so that's cool. Definitely has a bit of a soft feeling to it, but the other tracks just don't even really seem to make anything hittable hardly at all. Somewhat more similar to how it is like in the official Monster Energy Supercross game. It's kind of how some of the hard pack tracks are in this game and stuff, but the sand tracks is where it's like, whoa, okay, now we're seeing some improvements. Now we're seeing some differences once you get deeper into the moto. I'm not sure it's really going to do it on a 15 plus 2. It should. Hopefully it will. You can kind of see it starting to develop a little bit right there through that corner. And it's almost like you got to have a specific corner to do it too, if that makes any sense to you. It's like it's got to be a certain kind of corner, but it's not making ruts that are really going to grab you. It just might kind of change. I don't know. It's interesting how this game's rut system is. It's like it's got a like when you land and you're kind of like going through a corner that's got a couple of those little ruts in it, like you can feel the bike kind of reacting to the rut, but I don't know, it just doesn't have a whole lot of grab to it like you might expect on a more hardcore style rut or something like that, but it still does. You can just feel the bike's suspension and everything kind of moving over the rut, so you know it is there, but it just kind of has that feeling of you can just push it out of the way at any time. It's not one of those ruts it doesn't really feel like you ever cross rut, as I said that. Let me just fuck up in a rut. That one corner right there, for whatever reason, I don't know why, it kind of gets a couple of little outside ruts that feel like you kind of can cross rut in it, but everywhere else you're not going to cross rut. Like, it's not going to happen. You're not going to hit one and like the front end dip and dive down into the rut and then not be able to go through it. You know how like ruts that grab you enough, you dip and dive in them and then it kind of jacks up your front end. It doesn't really go to that extreme, I don't feel like, in the game, but see, like right here now we're starting to get some of those insides kind of like starts on the outside and then swoops back around to the inside a little bit. Kind of bizarre how it develops those ruts on that. I thought it was pretty interesting. Like, it keeps the insides sort of smooth, but the outsides, let's see if I can get out here and show you. Oh, this motherfucker. Just pushing me off the track, man. They're savages. They do not care, man. The AI in this game, it cracks me up. Like, the collision, that's a whole nother video, but whatever. We'll get in here and try to explain this terrain deformation that we got. So, yeah, like in your straightaways, it just kind of doesn't really do a whole lot. You know, it's not like digging down ruts on your straightaways too much. Just what you would expect in a milestone game on your straightaways, but in the corners on the sand tracks is where it does feel a little bit different. See, like that right there, you can kind of see the ruts starting to develop more on the outside that weren't there at the beginning, so that's cool. And these right here, you kind of get the feeling that you kind of get the feeling that you just want to start going to the inside and totally skipping all those ruts on the outside, because you're just scared that you're not going to see them properly, because they do kind of blend in with each other, especially on this track. I'm not sure on some of the other ones, but like if you get in one of those corners where the ruts don't really have a whole lot of shading on them, so you got to be a little bit careful when you're going through there like that. And a lot of times that's kind of how the ruts feel, like the terrain deformation, eroded ruts in this game. It just feels like it's more of a, let me just try to avoid that so that I don't even have to go through that kind of thing. That's at least personally, it doesn't feel like, ooh, there's a nice rut over there, let me go slam that. It doesn't really give you that feeling. It's more of a, it's just kind of there, and it's 80% visual, 20%, or maybe even 90% visual, 10% actually doing something. Let me fucking get my numbers right in my head. You know what I'm saying, though? Like, it's definitely leaning more towards the visual than actually changing something, but it does seem to be slightly improved from the way it was in the Official Monster Energy Supercross game. Felt like it wasn't doing hardly anything in that game, so at least you're getting a bit more of an actual physical feeling on the track, with this game here. And but yeah, like I'm saying, you notice it a lot more on your sand tracks, and it's not like it really makes inside ruts. I mean, let me not kid myself here. It ain't like you're coming around here and like really digging down in and being able to just go faster up an inside rut than you could normally. It's not really like that. It's almost like it just puts ruts down, but it doesn't. It just makes it to where your suspension kind of reacts more over the ground. It doesn't, like, it just kind of makes it maybe a little bit rougher in the corners. Like your suspension, you can kind of feel it going over the ruts through the corner, but it doesn't really feel like it's actually doing all that much. I mean, it's not like you're grabbing anything more hardcore than you would be otherwise, and you got to run damn near a full 30-minute plus two lap moto to really see what I'm talking about, and you got to be on the right track, the right corner, that kind of thing, to get something that's going to remotely grab you, like what I'm saying. So, if every track was a little more like that, maybe you'd be able to say that a bit more, but it's not. I'm only really noticing it on the sand tracks to be like that. So, but I've rode on the hard pack, rode on the clay. Clay's kind of interesting if I'm remembering the right track in my head right now. The clay, I think that's the track I'm thinking of. One of the clay tracks that, like, basically it will build a rut in the outside berm a little bit, and you can kind of dip and dive down into that somewhat, and so it's kind of cool on that. But as far as inside ruts actually developing and stuff like that, I haven't seen that on any track in this game. So if you're expecting that, sorry to burst your bubble and rain on your parade here, but yeah, it's not really like that. I think it's just the way that they have their suspension in the game and kind of the more pro style physics just gives you a bit more feedback on the bike when you're going through the corners that have those eroded ruts in them. But it's not, oh my God, gotta love it, bro. But not too much of an actual gameplay changer here. Guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's not like, oh my gosh, these ruts are crazy, bro. Like, it's actually doing something a lot in the corners. But these arcade motocross games, it's just, I think all the games, actually, I say arcade, I think all of them struggle with the terrain deformation and the erode. MX Simulator, I mean, it's, there's a lot of people quit playing MX Simulator because of them doing the erode in the pro racing, and yeah, so that's definitely something you could just tell it's rough for everybody out here trying to figure this out. It's just hard for it to make inside ruts without totally jacking up the track, basically, as kind of what it comes down to, and trying to make it to where it's feels soft, but yet it still grabs the bike, because it's hard to actually make develop terrain that grabs the bike, but you've made that terrain, right? It's hard to really make that. A lot of these games seem to have the feeling of where, like, you'll make the ruts and they'll look really good, but when you actually get into them, they're fairly soft. they're usually always fairly movable. They're not really grabbing you. It's more of a, oh, I can see my bike kind of going in that rut and it looks cool and shit, but it ain't really grabbing me. If you know real life motocross, you know what I'm talking about. When a fucking rut, like, when you get in it, you ain't getting out of it unless you get to the end of it. You got to ride that dragon out, bro. And that's how it is in real life. Like, a rut will grab your bike. I mean, it totally changes the handling of the bike in a corner when you go in a rut. And yes, I know this is a sand track, but I'm telling you, I've rode on quite a few tracks on 30 minutes plus 2 laps in this game already, and it's similar. It's none of them are making inside ruts like you think. So yeah, it's kind of how the terrain deformation is in MXGP Pro. I mean, I would say it's just one of those things. It's maybe a little bit better than it was in the official Monster Energy Supercross game. Not a lot better, but a little bit, or maybe a little bit better than it was in MXGP 3. That kind of, you can see this corner right here kind of develop more on the outside of that. But yeah, it doesn't really develop any roughness. If you don't get on a track that already has, there is one track in the game that has a little bit of pre-baked roughness in some of the corners. Kind of feel like, whoa, this feels like a AMA track a little bit. But if you're not on that track, basically like 90% of the tracks in the game don't have any roughness at all. So you're kind of just, you're going over like terrain that you can feel the suspension kind of moving on it, but it's not roughness. I mean, it's not like braking bumps, There's a big difference in having just kind of, I don't know the right word for not rough, like it's not perfectly smooth terrain, but it's not roughness, you know what I'm saying? It ain't like you're having to go slower because the terrain is rough. Now there is one track, I think it's the Mexico, whatever the actual name of it is in the game. It's pretty hardcore rough in here. It's not rough as in braking bumps, it's kind of rough as in like it's got kind of random janky, jagged, like square edge type of little humps and stuff all over that track. So it kind of can give you the feeling like you're just, you got to be really careful because you're smacking up on like little random raised, peaked out terrain on certain parts of the track and stuff like that. But the majority of the tracks in this game, it's pretty similar to your previous experiences in your milestone games. I mean, it's not that different in that sense. So it's just kind of something that you come to expect, and that's kind of seems like that's kind of the life story of this MXGP Pro. The stuff that you think is what you expect from a milestone game, this game does a little better. Stuff you don't expect a milestone game to do very good, this game doesn't really do it very good, right? So, but I mean, even when you look back at Reflex, even those ruts are a little bit movable, right? But it just, I guess in Reflex, you know how on the Sandwick it's not Southwick because they call it Sandwick, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And Reflex, I think I did a Rut Tester video on that and a wide open video on that because I love that track in that game. But it's kind of like the sand track in Reflex, right? Well, it starts off almost like baby ass butter smooth. Like there's hardly any roughness at all on the track. A couple little kind of like pre-made rollers into the corner and stuff like that. But once you get going, once you run like 20 laps on that bad puppy, I mean it makes like ruts. I'm talking like it makes its own big rut roughness berms, inside lines. It's incredible the way that Reflex's terrain deformation system actually is, because it actually can give you a true like game-changing feeling on the track, whereas I feel like most of these games they can't get it to that point. They can't accomplish the feeling of like, oh man, these ruts actually change the track. It just doesn't do it, This game gives you a little bit of it, but just you got to run damn near 69 laps on the track, and at that point, I mean, and it's barely doing it anyways, and only doing it on certain tracks and certain corners and stuff. So it's kind of the way it is here, I guess. But with Reflex, it's just, god dang, man, when I think back to that, and I'm not saying Reflex's terrain deformation system is what you call 100% perfect. I just think it's the best that we have right now, is what I'm saying. You see the ruts kind of in that corner a little bit. I mean, even when you talk about, like, with MX Simulator, it's just a rough one. I don't even want to get into that, but the erode on that, I mean, I think it's okay for what it creates and what it builds and stuff like that. I just think a lot of the issue with that is how they've kind of forced it into the pro racing and, the integration of it more than what it actually is in MX Simulator. So, but yeah, man, Rut Tester on this sand track. This is one of the most sandy tracks in the game. I would definitely say that for sure. You can see right there, a couple little ruts around that corner, but yeah, I mean, it basically does not change your flat straightaways whatsoever. It doesn't really change your jump faces anyhow. Doesn't do that at all. It's really only changing your corners. Your actual like flat corners like this right here. That's all you can really tell that it's doing. And even at that, it's just, it's not all that much at the end of the day. So, yeah, man, definitely wanting to come in here and make some more videos on this game. Having some fun just trying to kind of figure out everything about it and going in there making some videos. And it's interesting to see the comments people are leaving on this game, because you got everybody in the spectrum, it seems like, going on this. Some people are like thinking it's really good, some people are like definitely not thinking it's good. Some people are hating the whips. It's just, I feel like this game's got opinions from like all different angles on it, so it's interesting for sure nonetheless. But yeah, it's as far as the Rut Tester on this track, I mean, see it right there a little bit on the outside of there, but if those ruts weren't there, you could still go just as fast. I guess that's the moral of this story here. It's not actually making you slower or faster. Sometimes ruts and roughness should make you go slower on certain tracks. It shouldn't always make it faster, right? Well, this, it's like it just doesn't change it enough to make you go slower or faster. You're basically just going the same speed that you ever went before there was any roughness or terrain deformation on it at all. So yeah, just kind of that, that standard syndrome of more visual than actual gameplay changing type of thing. This game's got a weird thing where when you got it on manual shifting and you, if you like accidentally shift down into neutral or you crash and respawn or do anything like that, the bike like gets stuck in this over rev where you're like sitting there trying to you can shift all the way up to 5th gear and the bike is like not even moving, but your RPMs are way up. I have no idea what's going on with that, but like, let me see if I can do it. So if I get it back in neutral, I can like get it all the way in 5th gear, and it's like it takes it a minute before it gets back to its normal. And it's not like what you're thinking either. It's not like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. You got to understand what I'm saying. It's like you're able to be in 5th gear with your RPMs wide open, which you shouldn't be able to do that from a dead stop at any point in time. It's like the bike doesn't have any of its actual pull to it when you do that. So I don't know. There's definitely a bit of a bug there, but either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.